What's up, you guys? Welcome back to my channel, and today I'm going to be showing you 5 different transition ideas for your fan edits on Funimate. This is a part 3, so if you haven't seen part 1 or part 2, I will leave it linked down below. I'm going to be using 3 different images of Billie Eilish, which I got from Google as an example. So I just went ahead and clicked square, and then I expanded my duration so that you guys can see my example better. And this is number 1. So that was the first transition idea, so let's add an image. When your photo is settled, go ahead and click on animate. We will be adding an intro, so I just used wobble. I know non-pros don't have wobble, but you can use the other ones. They are equally cool as wobble. And yes, saying wobble 3 times can sound really weird, so go back to animate and click custom. And we will be moving that picture to the right halfway. But first, go ahead and add your main point, which is the middle. And then I'm just going to add my second point and then move it to the right halfway. That looks halfway to me, so for now we are just going to leave it at that and add our second image. I went ahead and cropped it out because it was way too wide. It wouldn't be fitting with the other images. Now you want to make that picture a tad bit bigger than your first one. And now we are going to add an intro to that one as well. Use basic. I'm just going to slow it down so you can clearly see the result. Now you want to adjust it to make it look like that second picture is pushing that first picture out. When you're done with that, let's go back to our first image and click on animate and then custom. Let's add a third point and move that image to the left. Once that is finished, click on scale. Let's make the picture look smaller as it goes on to the left. But first, you want to add your main point, of course, to keep that same size. But then when you add your second point, you want to make it smaller. So right now, it looks like this. So now that is finished, let's go back to our second image and move that image to the right. And of course, you want to add a main point to keep that position you had in the middle. And then on your second point, you want to move it to the right. Once you have it like that, click on scale and let's add our first point. And on your second point, you want to make the size look the same as the first image. And it should be looking like that, looking like they are rotating. And finally, let's add our third image. And the same thing with this one, it was way too wide, so I cropped it out into a square. Then I placed it in the middle with a bigger size than the other two. Then I clicked on animate and added an intro, which is basic, and that is how you do that. On to number 2. This transition is plain and simple, but it looks pretty cool and I've seen it on other fan edits, so I'm going to be showing you how to do it. And of course, let's add our image. Go ahead and place it on the middle. Then duplicate it. Then pick one of the photos to use mask. We will be cutting that into a circle. Once you have that, try to keep that circle aligned to your first or square image. Once it's aligned, I'm just going to add an intro. I'm going to be using wobble wobble. I'm going to be using wobble in a lot of these intros, so be prepared for my wobble wobble. Alright, now when you're on rotate, let's add our first point and our second point also. On your second point, let's turn it halfway. It doesn't matter which way, left or right, as long as the square and circle are going the opposite direction of each other. Now let's go ahead and move on to our circle. I rotated the square to the left, so I'm going to rotate the circle to the right, but halfway. So that should be good. Now let's cut our time on these images to that dot to connect it to our second image. So on this one, I just basically did the same exact stuff as I did on the first image. So basically, you're just gonna finish off where you left off to make a full 180. So that is how you do this effect or transition. And that is the final result. Let's move on to the third one. So of course, first off, let's get our image. Now you want to duplicate it so we can crop both of them in half, one top, one bottom. Then let's add some pizzazz. Let's add intro to your top and bottom. And of course, we're going to be using wobble. Now same effect for the top one, but they should be going in different directions or coming in different directions. And that is good. Of course, let's add our first point and then our second point. We are going to move it up, but we are going to stop halfway. Same thing as the bottom one, move it down just halfway. And now let's add our image for the middle. This is a good size, but you want to make sure you put it behind your first image, not your clips, but your first image. Now let's add some intro. I'm going to be using slide. Now when you click on slide, you will see 4 different arrows. I used up and down. It doesn't really matter which direction. I think the up and down just looks better. Now let's go back and add our second image. And you want it to have that continuous effect, so you want to continue it to that first image. So after you put it in the middle, let's add an intro. Let's put slide again to give that continuous effect, and that's how it should look like. And let's move on to number 4. And let's add our first image. Our first image is going to be a black square, 4 to be exact, so I'm going to be duplicating it into 4s. So before we add our image, let's add an intro to these square. I'm going to be using wobble. So if you pull offset all the way to the left with the direction of going down, the square will come in on the top left corner. With offset all the way to the left and direction or the arrow going up, it will come in on the bottom left corner. Okay, when you pull the offset all the way to the right and the direction going down, it will come in on the top right corner. And same thing, offset all the way to the right, but direction or the arrow going up, it will come out on the bottom right corner. So I hope that little explanation didn't confuse you, but I am going to be applying those 4 into these 4 squares as their intro. Now when you're done with your intro and your black squares, let's add our image. So you want the image on that square and the other image, which is the same image, on that square. And yes, I'm going to be adding an intro to these images, but it's just the same intro as I put on my black squares, the squares that they are on. Now for our outro of these images, I'm going to be using strips in 2 parts in any kind of directions you want, but just make sure the same images get the same direction. So as soon as your outro finishes, that's where you want to add your second image. So as you can see on the red line right there, that's where my outro stopped. So I will start there to add my second image. And those images will go on those remaining black squares. And then I added the intro of stripes, having two parts but going the opposite direction as your first images. Now to end this whole transition, I have an idea for you. I just screenshotted the whole screen. I added the image and I cropped it out. I cropped it out until all that was left was that square. Now I'm going to duplicate it to crop it in half, one top, one bottom. And you want to have it aligned like that. And then I'm just gonna add some random outro. And that is how you do that. On to the last one, number 5. This is just a simple one, but it's pretty cool, so I'm going to be showing you how I did that. But first I went to PixArt to add that black background behind my image. But first, before we put a black background on our images, let's blur out a background. I'm gonna blur out this picture of her. When you're done with that, let's go back to Funimate and add our blurred image, which is the background. Then now we're going to add one of our images that has the black background behind it. And as our intro, of course, I'm going to be using Wobble. And for our outro of this image, we are going to be using Slide. We can have it go to the left. Now let's add our second image. And you want to somehow align it perfectly so the effect or transition looks pretty smooth. Now for our intro on this one, we are going to be using Slide and going to the left direction. Now when you're done with that part, This part is basically just timing and aligning it perfectly. It took me a while at first, but in the end you'll get it. And when you do have it, let's add some text. But make sure you're on that Gothic font so that it gives us a straight line without any dashes or cuts. This took me a while, but you want that line on that very end so that it looks like it's pushing that effect on to the left. And once you do have it, you want to go into the left also. I'm going to be showing you how I ended this effect. I just basically got a normal square and that normal picture without a black square behind it. And as their outro, I had them going the opposite ways, black square going on the left bottom corner and the image going up the top right corner. And that is it for our video today. Thank you guys so much for watching. If something wasn't very clear, please comment down below and I'll try to clear it up for you. But otherwise, if you like this video, please leave a like and please subscribe to my channel if you haven't.